think they will catch on.
Right.
So before we start, may I request everybody to switch on their camera for just a few minutes so we can take a selfie on the Zoom. This is something that I've been doing every time I host a meeting. And I think it's worthwhile because it tells all of us that we are here as a community, though we are not face to face and though we are not in the same place. So yes, I have a lot of people from the first. 1 second, I need to change something here. Yeah, this is better. Okay, smile everybody. And now to screen 2. Okay, smile. And screen 3. All right, that's good. So let's get to the agenda. Thank you everybody for joining.
There's a screen 4 also.
No, I just checked. We did the
Okay.
3 screens that were there. So I think we're good. I've covered everybody so far.
Okay. Good. Yeah.
So thank you all for joining. I am very pleased to have with us Professor Manvita Baradi, who most of you know, perhaps all of you know. Manvita is a senior professional. She has been working on issues of cities, state, and national level importance on multiple aspects: urban planning, heritage management, citizen participation, capacity building, developing urban indicators. She's been working on this almost her whole life. She is the founder director of Urban Management Center, UMC, an organization that is working towards professionalizing urban management in India and in South Asia. She has served as the Director South Asia for the ICMA, which is the International City and County Management Association. She has also served as an expert on many programs funded by the USAID, the World Bank, in countries like Afghanistan, Indonesia, Sri Lanka. She is also associated with the INTAC, the Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage. Most of you know that Manvita is an alum of CEPT. She did her undergraduate in architecture and her postgraduate in urban planning. And she is also very passionate about theatre. She is a renowned name in Gujarati theatre. She has been actively involved in development communications and using street theatre as an effective medium of communication. She has also helped develop many video productions on urban issues. She has been a professor and dean at the Faculty of Management at CEPT University from 2013 till 2020. I am very pleased to welcome Manvita for this inaugural webinar of this semester, Monsoon 2020. She will make a presentation and then we will take the questions. So if you would all please write your questions in the chat box, that will help us moderate the questions and take them up in the end. So thank you once again for joining. And with that, welcome Manvita, over to you.
Thank you so much, Chirayu. I'm really pleased and excited to talk to all of us after many, many days now. Very happy to see Gayatri, Mercy. I think Shelly is also there, Jyoti. So thanks again for inviting me for this seminar. I'm also pleased to see a lot of students who are an alums of the Faculty of Management. So very happy to have you come, and thanks for coming. I'm going to share with you what my journey has been in a moment, and through our work at the Urban Management Center. I would like to share my screen now. And I will do so in a moment. I guess I'm doing the right thing. Yes?
Yes.
Correct. Okay, great. Okay. So today I'm going to talk to you as a topic is cities matter. And I feel it does matter. I'm going to talk to you what the paradigm shift is required and has happened to an extent, and more with all of us coming together, we can do a little more. And we need that harmonized management, which I'm going to talk to you about. These are a few examples from our work, but it might help structure our and the new professionals who I'm looking forward to taking this baton forward in urban management. So we all know city is a powerhouse of economic activity. We are all mostly urban bred, maybe second or third generation city dwellers. City is an organism. It grows, and due to market forces, we've all learned that as well. And people's aspirations bring them to cities. Cities constantly are growing, and especially in our South Asian context, cities grow very fast. It's a place where families and individuals find what we need and what we want. Cities consist of people, businesses, industries, academic and cultural organizations, and there is a governance structure. It has to manage itself. It is a microcosm and a subset of other governance structures as defined by the law of land. You know, various forms of government in the world have their own structures of governance. And so cities are shaped by that governance structures. In India, we know 3 tiers: the state, the center, and the local governments. So what we've been doing is we've been doing at all the 3 levels. People come here to get access to all of these services. These services are required to be governed and managed, and that is where we require a focused attention on managers. And I fondly say this many, many times in the classes and otherwise, that our country has great architects, planners, designers, engineers. Where are the managers? And hence, urban management is such a noble profession. And I'm sure you all are here because you all believe in it. But it did not exist in that sense when I started out my journey. I started in 1997 almost. And after doing architecture, I wasn't very pleased looking at what I wasn't happy bound by that plot and designing with that piece of land. I was always striving to look beyond the plot. Though our courses allowed us to see it, the urban design was undertaken. We were taught all of that, but I was still dissatisfied. I thought I should study planning. It will give me a full understanding of how cities and communities are planned. Because my work in theater, as Chirayu also mentioned, allowed me and rather forced me to see not only built fabric, but people as a fabric. The communities, the way they happen, they make themselves. So my work with the communities began as early as I was 10 years old. And prior to that, my upbringing was in Russia. So I knew only Russian language to that matter. And I understood the countries and the services very differently. You know, Russia was USSR and a very centralized way of doing work. So on one hand, my upbringing, but I got the best because I was a young kid in a Russian system where kids were given everything what they wanted. When I came back to India, I was extremely pained, though I was very excited to come because my parents were shifting back here. I was very excited to come to India, but the first few days and months and so on, it was terrible. I was, from the first 2 days, maybe excited to see cows on the road, but when I fall sick, I had series of illnesses in the first few months that I was here. I hated the travel on the streets and the roads. My parents' houses were my grandpa's and grandmom's houses were very far apart, and we had to travel a lot of distance on the roads, and I was pained to use the toilets. So this sharp contrast which hurt me from Russia to India, though my people were here, my family was here, it had given me a very, very different perspective to governance, which was latent in myself, which I did not realize then. But when I studied architecture planning, I thought there is still something missing. I hated many things about what we have. I was shocked to see and continue to see this. I realize this, the aspirations of people, but this is not what I experienced. I cannot accept this. I just am, I get very disturbed, and it hurts many of us. So this is the reality of today. These are all pictures in which we all see. This also exists. You know what this is. We have our people still going down the drains, though we have beautiful, wonderful legislations. We have the acts which say that this is not to be done, but our cities do this. Private sector does this. Well, common sight. Though we have beautiful buildings, we have water treatment facilities, but this is equally true. This is the treatment in a small town in Gujarat. It is chlorine is being added to water for purifying. And look at the state of affairs. This exists. When we talk of our data management, because we constantly believe, right, that our cities can improve when our data is right. We have to have decision making. We have to have our systems in place to be able to change it. Now, this is what our data looks like. Governments are complex. City governments have to deal with not only their own local governance issues, structures, but also coordinate with state and the center. We all know local governments are, their managers are also put in by the central government. The commissioner is an IAS mostly, and mostly commissioner is representing the central government's position, because he or she is hired by, through the state government, but hired by the center or sent by the center. So how much is the local government voice? Are we really autonomous? Each of our departments are linked with state and the center. That is a problem and the beauty of it. And we need to understand, maybe not today, but sometime later. But these are our complex systems. So with that background, when I started my journey, this is what we finally decided, that what's our theory of change? What is Urban Management Center's theory of change? We believe if policy reforms are implemented, because there are a lot of reforms, but they need to be implemented, the systems are strengthened at all the three levels of the government. The city managers are capacitated and empowered. Mark all these words, are empowered. Then only our cities could be and would become livable, productive, and equitable. They are the key to making our cities happen. So how do we see this happening through our work? Urban Management Center is also known as Friends of Cities. We are not the typical consulting type who would be seen in a negative light when we come to work with the government. Government has very strong preferences. We position ourselves as friends of cities. Strengthening the existing and traditional mechanism of municipal delivery systems are very important for us, rather than building up a parallel ecosystem. We don't prescribe that we should have a parallel system. Cities are here to stay. They have systems. We need tweaking. We need to change. We need to strengthen. We are not kind of non-profit organization which would go on the rooftop and shout and say, hey, government, you are doing ABC wrong. We are not that kind of people. We are very differently positioned since 97. And we say, hey, look, come together. Let's work ourselves. Let's work ourselves to achieve together, because we cannot replace the government. We provide much needed handholding support to all levels of government through a research, policy, interpretation of legislation, measuring performance, conducting training, etc. We are about now 60 people organization, mostly architects, engineers, finance experts. It's a very multidisciplinary organization with urban designers, archaeologists, communications expert, and social people. These are few of the ideas or projects which I've listed, and I would skim through first four very quickly, but I would like today to focus more on community engagement and local government work, which is currently on high priority with us. So we, as part of our advocacy, and I did mention that local governments are the bottom of the pyramid, but they are supposed to be autonomous, which sometimes they are not. But their voice is very important to be heard at the state and the center. The state and the central governments are far away from citizens. And thinking with those ideals, this was my very, very first work which I, as in a personal capacity, got involved with ICMA for a 5 days assignment, and where I did not anticipate at that point of time, which would lead me to have a career in urban management and inspire many others to have that career. This was an association formation workshop which I was asked to facilitate, and the idea was whether cities can and should come together as one voice to talk to center and the state. And this is what we concluded, that city managers had come together, discussed. We had people from government agencies, US government, and others. We deliberated, and finally we came up with an association. Association movement also continued based on our work there, with some of the really new ideas for giving that. Even the term city manager does not exist. I don't know how many of you are aware of it, but now that it is an accepted term, in US it meant a commissioner equivalent, while we used the term generically and said people who are running the city are city managers. We all know we have great business houses, great business manager. We have wonderful schools of business. Why didn't we have any school for city management? And I was thrilled when I was invited by Bimal to start the program at CEPT on urban management way back in 2013. That really, really gave me strength to take my ideas forward, that not only we need to work with existing city managers and the professionals there, But we need new cadre of professionals who are trained in the complex systems of management of cities and take that profession and career option forward. So now we have 13 such state associations, which was my first very step in doing so, which led to understanding what needs are for capacity building. What are the needs? How do city managers learn? How do these officers, whom we call them commissioners or head of departments or engineers, city engineers, etc., learn differently? What is their career path? So we thought it's a different way to teach or work with city managers. They are senior bureaucrats. And when I say city managers, I talk about bureaucrats more than talking about elected representatives, because their learning curve is different. While city managers, whether they've come through the ranks or done an IAS training in Masuri, etc., they are trained differently. So case-based learning methods was adapted for them as well. And I'm sure you know our curriculum at CEPT of urban management is also similar. We have studio-based learning here with officers. I used to do case-based learning method, and which is accepted in business management learning as well. Plus, peer-to-peer learning processes were encouraged. This was not done earlier. This is 1997 onwards. The pedagogy was set then. We also thought about working with tools to improve efficiency. So how do we create tools which are handy for city managers to take it for better analysis and data-driven analysis for decision making? We provide then back office support, or I rather call it, say, technical assistance. We embed our staff in the systems, and to do what? Say, for example, if we want to improve water supply, an action plan would be charted out to not just do a survey, but say who are payers, who are non-payers, what is the lack of information, how can we strengthen our systems, what are the tools required to, say, measure the quality of water. Not that our cities did not do it, but they're not regular. Those the CPHU manual and many of engineers in the session here would know, there are pretty much guidelines available for us to, and the engineers to use, but how much of that is being used by our city managers is abysmal. And it's really sad to say the sorry state of affairs. That requires improvement. That requires understanding of, though our legislation exists, what happens. So that work also led us to understand how municipal management manual could be written. And this was written for Afghanistan government with our work there. We were working in Afghanistan, a beautiful country. It's just sad that the way it has turned out to be in history, that they've really lost so much. Wonderful people to work with as well. But they haven't had, since 40 years, any appropriate educational systems in place. They did not have urban development department of their own. So we helped create, I was part of the team, and then we were tasked to do a municipal management manual for the Afghan government. And that gave us immense learning about which we worked on various services, how, what should be done, etc. Apart from that, working on base plan because Afghanistan did not have maps to start with. Not that our cities have, but that gave us more confidence while working in Afghanistan that, well, we can do much better here. We also worked on strategic municipal action plans. And when I say our cities should have a management plan, this is all my background, which comes, and we have prepared our curriculum at CEPT on making management plans, which normally our cities don't. So understanding revenue system, land management, doing appropriate CAD mapping. So of course, my experience in planning helped, and how do you look at land parcels, etc. Along with that, we were embedded in many of the city governments, and post-tsunami, our work with Nagapattinam and Kadalur in Tamil Nadu led us to understand how to work with community, and community playground was one of the asks by the community there. The city had lost its one playground which existed on the beach, and this asked of us to try and recreate one. So the whole method which was adopted by us was interesting. We worked with school children to sketch what their dream playground would be. We got parents to build the playground, and how the teachers and community together made, you can see on your right side, the wooden playground of teak was prepared, and it was such an amazing experience. As architects, we are passionate about heritage, but we have a different take on it. We believe that heritage structures and buildings are assets, but they represent our history of communities embodying their tradition, heritage, and culture through architecture and urban form. But city government should act as facilitators, not state or the center. And that advocacy idea, we have taken it forward in creating, say, our work with Surat, where we listed heritage property. Now, at that point of time, this was not done. City governments were not interested with creating a heritage department. It did not exist. This was 2007-8 period when Ahmedabad had a way forward, but not Surat or many other cities. So understanding heritage and creating a department within heritage where listing becomes important and grading becomes important, because it's an asset. That asset could be then used to even funding the house owners for better managing their assets. So that whole thinking and writing a policy for it became important at that time. Here you can see the pictures where these are above the door frames and lintels, how Surat, being the port city, was described, and that gave us insight into architectural history and tradition of Surat, and was amazing experience. We used GIS to plot each and every cell, the heritage structures, graded them, what is the structural stability, how the buildings should be, and then write a heritage management plan and come up with bylaws. Because bylaws right now are written for not specific to city, unfortunately. There was a tradition once that Ahmedabad, Surat, etc. had their own bylaws, but now this with the state government coming out with bylaws are well a problem. But it should be city specific and also specific to our heritage structures and the surrounding areas. That needs to be done, and we've done it for Sarkej Roja and many other monuments, which I'm not dwelling it right now. But this is an important part of our work, and we are very excited about it. So now I'm going to talk to you at length about community engagement and local government management we are right now involved in. And how we've understood that the government engages with urban poor, who are important stakeholders in the city, and it engages in two ways. One is through livelihood improvement with people-centric approach, where improved livelihoods or alleviating the below poverty line people are involved, or The physical improvement with settlement-centric approach, with most built environment professionals that are involved in, is improving your settlements infrastructure, quality of services, housing, and public places. We are trying to bridge that gap through understanding our livelihoods and understanding the physical improvement as well. As you know, we are also the technical support for livelihoods program sitting with the national government in the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, and at the state level, urban development departments in 4 states. So that gives us immense understanding of how 3 levels of government interact or don't interact with each other. And the 4th layer is this people, and where we have understood that the people-centric approach are talked through the programs, say NULM, which is Livelihoods Mission, or PMKVY, which is the Kaushalya Vikas Yojana, which is skill-based, and they have programs which work with the cities, with the people. Now, the duration of engagement is with the self-help groups. They are supposed to come together and alleviate themselves from poverty, and that's the policy direction which the National Livelihoods Mission gives to people, and city governments are in charge because urban poverty is a local government issue. So though the center talks about and they have a mission for it, the trickle down happens at the local government level where they're supposed to work with communities. Now, how much of that is done is a question, but they're supposed to do it. And a lot which you can see probably is because of what they have done. Sustainability becomes important here, that self-help group members are coming together for, when it started, for a financial inclusion. But we are now expecting them to do a little more. Well, the settlement-centric approach is, you know all these missions. SPM is Swachh Bharat Mission, Amrit, the PMAY, the Smart Cities Mission. They're all very physical, planning-oriented missions. The method of engagement with the community is charity here. You are asking, the government will give you one time something, but the upkeep or O&M is not their responsibility. Who has to do it? Maybe the local government or actually the community. Now, how does it get it done, or does it get it done? A question. So our learning has been that we have to strengthen community engagement and strengthen local government both ways. Unless that is achieved, we won't be able to do what our cities need to transform. That transformation process will not happen. And we have 9 points which we have learned and which I'm going to share with you. How this community resilience is achieved. So slums are collectives. They fare, if the slum dwellers come together, they fare better than others. Now, this is very much proved during the COVID-19 situation. We have supported formation of, where we call it Masal Samitis or sanitation samitis. Basically, they are the resident welfare associations equivalent of the slum dwellers. Like our societies have RWAs, similarly slum dwellers should come together. Now that's a problem because they're squatting on land, maybe somebody's land. Government do not want them to be there, but they are there. They're not going to go away. So instead of driving them away, we have to provide water sanitation and maybe help them to come together to solve their own problems. Local government also would want to discuss with a formal structure. I mean, they can't really go out and reach out to your 80 lakh or population in the city. So we need to form samitis or communities. We've helped do that, and we've seen that a committee which is formed. They try to solve their own problems by regular meetings. They prepare their own plan. They also helped each other during the COVID crisis. They had community kitchens set up. They would meet occasionally and try and get, if lending was a problem, if one family is not doing so well, the others helped. So the power of the collective was very evident, and this is one of the biggest learnings, that slums are, they come together. The second thing is community-led civic planning is extremely important to improve basic services. So local governments can help communities better. It is their function to do it. It is their duty to do it. And if they have come together, for instance, this community on your left you can see that they've made their own plan, used Rangoli to do it, to communicate to the local government officials who had come that which house had A, B, or C services, and they wanted X, Y, Z to be corrected or not corrected. So they make their settlement improvement planning is extremely important, and it gets done because of their involvement. So you can see the kind of maps of Rangoli being created. They then sketch it. We help them to formalize it. We translate that into pen and paper, and also build their capacities to take this work forward, because we will never be able to replace them, or we are never going to be living there. We are also just a catalyst. It's a process which is to be handed over. We're not going to be there forever for them, right? So community-led designs become important. We have to empower them to find their own solutions, and they have the solutions. It's not that we as professionals, we go there and maybe we bring pen and paper, or we help them to sketch and draw better, maybe because of our training, but ideas are theirs. So they came up with their own toilet design. You might have heard the stories of many organizations doing that, but this was our eye-opening. The community design was very different than what government thought men and women wanted toilets or community required toilets. Women said that we want a large courtyard where our children can play while we use the toilets. We will come here to wash clothes. So there are no now wells where women would go, talk, chat. And it is a need to socialize. Men socialize very differently than women. We have to realize that women, while doing the household chores, come together. The children are taken care of by other women while the mom is washing clothes or using the toilet. It's a community living in a different kind. And so our designs changed while working in Orissa. So this is just an example. Community also did their own monitoring. They looked at the settlement and reported that this basti has ABC problems. So the greens are the toilets are being cleaned, yellows are not being cleaned, etc., etc. So this happens, and this is very, very common to see now in our communities. Now, we've also realized that e-payments, banking, mapping, filming, e-learning are now here to stay, and communities have accepted the change. The digital mediums are there. They can afford it, and they make sure that they want it. Each household would have at least one smartphone. And probably man of the house mostly has it, but they have it. We tried telling stories because now the schools are closed. So that digital adaptability of kids and the families are immense. The fourth point I would like to make it, they are very quick at adapting livelihood changes. We have seen that there is enterprise in where they are. maybe not by choice, but because there is no option but to adapt. And local governments are bound to support, and the enterprise training is to be given to them. They've changed their professions somewhere. So plumber would be selling vegetables, a vegetable vendor would help do this Swachh Sathi work, which Odisha government is now using the self-help groups to go and communicate these ideas to other slum dwellers. So they adapt to these new learning, new thinking as well. They are also helping in municipal sanitation service management. For instance, looking at communities toilet management or MRFs, the material recovery facilities. The services which are managed by the community for the community are much better operated than when outsourced to a private agency. And you would all agree that if there is ownership of their assets, it is always much better maintained. So yes, SHGs have adapted to alternate livelihoods, and many of you might have heard the stories that the mask making has come up, and most of our slum women have done that, and they're doing fabulous job. A country did not have real problem or lack of masks. It's about 1 billion people country, and I guess it has reached all. The other important part of our work has been community-led behavior change communication work. And we work with communities, and well, my personal work in working in street theater makes me believe that unless we have interpersonal communication, go to slums, go to communities and talk about the real issues will not get addressed. And we've created such, we've trained performers out of these communities, and they have taken the message forward. We've also created, on the other hand, a learning platform with the ministry called ULearn. It's a video-based learning and drama-based learning on how the livelihoods mission functionaries like our self-help group members can do literacy or can do coming together, and what are the paradigms of coming together and making their own lives better. So it's a drama-based series. It's a serial, and after each episode there are questions to be answered, and if you answer the questions, the ministry is giving you a certificate. So that whole learning method and LMISD was set up by us and for the ministry, and it's really amazing to see how slum dwellers or the community members adapted. We are also working on formalizing arrangement of SHG women helping to serve the municipal services better. They could be hands and legs of the municipal cadre. And though it's not a formal employment, but on daily basis or monthly basis, they're employed as to be able to reach out to communities. The other learning for the local governments has been that slums are not homogeneous. Local governments normally represent slums as a unified blob without internal variations. They did not really understand it. And when we started mapping how the slums are with them, and that's part of our capacity building exercise as well. They're different. For instance, we would do a building footprint. We would do whether they have municipal tap connection, hand pump, water facilities, who has a toilet. So like you can see here, the greens have individual toilet, like yellows are shared toilet, while there are public toilets these families are using. So there is a variation. You can't say each slum is homogeneous. This is similarly about having a water or municipal sewer or septic tank, because each system is different. We also have been working with infrastructure improvements. Sorry, I'll have to let my dog out. 1 second, sorry. Oops, sorry. So acknowledging that slum mapping also leads to working with the local governments on the last mile connectivity. For instance, municipal staff did not know about few houses which had or had not sewer connections. They thought it's sewered, but when we said the houses are way back inside, so mapping becomes very important. During COVID, we also realized that women's empowerment has fallen back a few steps, and that's a big learning for us. Domestic violence has increased. The link to home-based livelihoods though has increased, but so is the domestic violence, and women's contribution to the income has increased, but they have fallen off the radar, because if there is an option, man or a woman, the first employment unfortunately goes to men than her. So that has been a biggest jolt in the family income of the communities. It has also disrupted the regular health service. For instance, vaccination, maternal or reproductive health, or TB, polio medicines have not been able to keep pace with the requirement. So mapping such, where are the slums and where are the health centers, have helped us to understand that sometimes it is not enough. All the slum dwellers are forced to use the government hospitals, though the facilities are at the doorstep. They have public health centers, but unfortunately, unless you show it on the map, it's very difficult for a municipal staff to get it organized in their working method. We also realized that local government supported the sanitation staff through PPEs, that is public, the protective gears, or through giving the standard operating procedures. But there were many informal sanitation workers were severely affected. And well, some of our work has helped, but it's still a long way to go. By giving SOPs is not enough. We have to handhold the municipal staff to do it. So with that, we have also worked with classroom and on-field training of including women masons to get them to have gotten employment post-COVID. The e-learning, which I mentioned, for the communities, was also created for the municipal functionaries. And I'm sure many of you know this. It's been functional since last 4 years under the Swachh Bharat mission, that until now, 8.5 lakh, actually about 9 lakh certificates have been issued, people who have completed the courses. So it's a way of continuous learning and teaching method created by the ministry through our engagement. So this is my last point, which talks about that we have crossed that IT resistance barrier, and local governments are now looking at more comprehensive sanitation mapping and knowledge management as a way forward. And e-governance is now has come to stay, and a lot of government engagement will depend on how digital they are and will be. So all these apps which we have created have helped the municipal administration in the select cities which we are working in to provide better services, because it's now the community which is telling them the apps are also with the community and apps are with the municipal staff to be able to make a difference. So data-driven decision making this is how we've been able to bring. So unless we have community and local governments working hand in hand, probably the issues which I listed in the beginning is not going to be solved. And this is our humble attempt as my organization, Urban Management Center. We've been working with both this levels of government and also with the community. Thank you. Thank you for being here. I'm ready to take questions if there are.
Thank you, Manvita. This is very enlightening, and at least I saw your work in its entirety, perhaps for the first time. I've known lots of different bits and pieces of it, but I think this was a good sort of overview of the entire journey. And while we wait for others to write up in the chat, I will perhaps start off with one question. Even in the university setting, there are these discussions and debates about access to IT as one of the challenges to this new normal. Correct? The new normal is where we are trying to operate online for the most part, like this webinar that we are doing. A lot of other things, a lot of business is conducted online, and sort of it looks, at least not so far, that this is going to continue for some time. So in the cases that you mentioned, in the communities that you're working with, they're across different cities and they're across geographies. So how is it? How is the access to IT? You mentioned a little bit that perhaps a lot of people have smartphones, at least one in the family. But is that the general sense? Is it sort of homogeneous, or is it varied? Yeah.
Yeah, it is varied. It is not homogeneous. I mean, like most things, this is also not homogeneous. Income levels are different. States, each state is different in our context. Like for instance, even the I'm sure you all know it, but the definition of urban poor varies from state to state. It's hard. It's hard to imagine. I mean, an urban poor in Orissa is maybe making is considered a person making 30,000 rupees a month, while in Gujarat, I mean a year, and in Gujarat it's 2 lakhs a year. So you know that homogeneity does not exist. So there, the access to such things is also varied. Gujarat is a bit more fortunate, I would say, and because of its one industrial nature of the state, or the economic growth which has happened in the state, is also trickle down effect for the communities to have more access to monies in that sense. But Orissa is very different. So it varies. However, we have seen that the communication medium is more important for them, because it brings in livelihoods, because livelihood is a driver to get the phone. I can call and get my work. And hence it is sometimes, and maybe you've heard this, it's more important than owning a toilet. The toilet, they postponed. So in Orissa, we've had a extremely difficult time to convince people to even get government subsidy for a toilet, because they said, khali toilet hame nahi chahiye. We want a bathroom along with, which did not This request did not come from Gujarat. They were okay with a makeshift chokdi kind of a bathroom. But Orissa said, no, I will have toilet only if you give me a bathroom. But that, government said no. I mean, it was a toilet scheme. So mediating between community with the local government and state level to say, hey, look, you can't have 8,000 rupees going to the people. They will not accept. Plus, additionally, they will have. So only if they had additional income to build a bathroom, they accepted the subsidy for a toilet. So such nuances are a lot. We understood that through our work. And however, the adaptability, as you asked about the IT tools, is much, much more now than earlier.
Thank you, Manvita. I think Nimit has asked a question. Can you please talk a little bit about specific issues of peri-urban spaces and city fringe areas you may have come across? Are these issues specific? Are these issues different to rural or city issues, whether they are about sociology or technical issues like utilities?
Thanks, Amit. Wonderful question. So our work in urban areas led to our work in the rural areas as well. And though there is a separate ministry, there are separate departments, it's a different way to work in rural and urban. Until now, we have seen organizations working in rural areas are extremely different and very, very, they are niche organizations. And the country did not have organizations working in urban areas because it wasn't understood. Plus, the paradigm of the country, I mean, the whole, our emphasis has been rural economy, rural, etc., etc. So between that, the periphery definitely gets lost. When we started work in the urban, in the rural, after understanding urban, we came with a different perspective, and which is helpful. But we are also working with the state governments to have convergence between urban and rural. That's our, I mean, वो झंडा लेने फरिए जो झंडा लेके घूम रहे हैं हम कि अर्बन एंड रूरल का कन्वर्जेंस होना चाहिए. हाँ, उड़ीसा ने हमारी बात थोड़ी सी मानी है, and Odisha has a convergence cell, and fortunately, at least for sanitation services, what they have been able to collect, because Odisha is not sewered at all. Only Bhubaneswar has some 20% sewage network. Rest of the Odisha depends on on-site sanitation systems, which means soak pits and septic tanks. And the whole country does not know how to build septic tanks. And I'm sure Nimit, being an engineer, would agree with me that there's too much to be done. The last mile coverage of understanding our building utilities and systems are so bad that, I mean, so Orissa is going to collect its fecal sludge from rural areas and dump it into urban areas where they're creating fecal sludge management systems, not sewage management system, because वो नहीं आने, STP नहीं बनेगा, वहाँ STP, FSTPs बन रहे हैं. So it's a very different direction compared to what Gujarat is saying. Gujarat has totally decided that we will not do, we will have only STPs and sewered cities. We will not even look at our soak pits and septic tanks. So, that's a difference. But peri-urban areas have to have, and informal systems exist. And as part of our studios, we have discussed this, and Nimit, you know about it, that large townships, when they have they collect their fecal sludge, they can bring it, and they do bring it to the city's STPs. However, there has to be a formal system, and there should be a fee-based system for sustainable solutions for the large city they are near. So the peri-urban areas have to have a relationship with the main city and that relationship has to be formalized, which we are not looking. And that's a management problem, and we all need to, try and solve it.
Thank you,
Yes.
Manvita.
Thank you. Thanks, Manvita.
Yeah, there's a question about the smartphone apps, but I think you talked quite a bit about that, about how the applications are designed. I think the next question is more interesting. As an urban manager, what is the spectrum of work as an individual or team in an urban area? Because many a times our jobs have a conflict with someone else's designation, especially bureaucrats. So how do you work with bureaucrats?
So, yeah, well, urban management is a profession, and at some point, and uh, with our advocacy with the central and the state governments, it will be a designation accepted by the state and the city governments to employ urban managers like yourselves. That requires a little bit of work with our ministries, and there will be a time that that designation will be accepted. Until that time, there are too many opportunities to sit outside the government and work with them, like probably what we have tried and attempted to do it. But that does not mean this is the only solution. At some point, this change will happen. And I'll tell you this story. So until 2011, the IS Academy, the Masuri, the Lal Bahadur Shastri, Labasna jisko bolte hain, IS Academy did not have a course in urban management. I mean, they did not teach the commissioners did not understand how cities function. वो कोई discussion में था ही नहीं. The rural administration was discussed. Urban administration to an extent was discussed, but the relationship between urban areas, police, all of that, police separately gets discussed, but nothing in comprehensively. And for the first time in 2011, when we put that workshop together, and we were invited, and I was part of the panel to design a 2-credit course for them. So now on, maybe the admin and administrators have a course, but until that point, because our as a country's attention was not on urban, we are a rural centric the country, right? We still wrote in our essays, no, India lives in villages. But today, India is 43% urban, and maybe it will be 50%. I mean, you know the statistics. In next 20 years will be 50% or more. And that also actually means our definition of urban and rural has to be relooked. That is also a problem. That's why we are more rural than urban. So that work still remains. So urban management is relatively a new profession. But we need many, many, many people like yourselves to be able to have one voice and make an impact and change the way our cities are. Yeah.
So there's a question from Mercy. With such a vast experience in working with communities over a period of time, have you encountered some unintended consequences of any program implementation, maybe which emerged during the post-implementation impact assessment or something like that? Unintended consequences.
Yeah, the 9 points which I mentioned definitely had some of that, because when we wrote the programs and such large engagement with 3 levels of government, and the community requires funding to be able to engage such deeply. When we wrote, we did not anticipate working with self-help groups in the way we have engaged now. We were not privy to third gender communities, and that was the biggest surprise when we came across them and they came forward and said, look, we have been begging, but we don't want to beg. We are, so the group of transgenders who were living close by, and they came together and said, we want to form a SHG. Can we do it? I mean, well, yeah, you are people. I didn't know what to answer. But it was very, very interesting for us to work with them. And they are in Paradeep in Orissa, and they have done amazing work. They are now making agarbattis for temples, and they've been accepted by the social now. So there are many such anecdotes which has taken us by the surprise. Yeah, Mercy. Yeah.
I think last two questions
Thank you.
we will take. Aditi Disen says, the point about last mile connectivity of services was particularly interesting. Could you please talk a bit about fund generation for these local projects, especially considering subsuming of several local financial sources after the introduction of GST?
Okay. Yes, last mile connectivity is not seen. I mean, as I also mentioned in my talk, that it's always a one want. People want to say, oh, hey, we become very blind to the nuances, the differences in the community. We are not homogeneous. Neither we are homogeneous as people, but neither our built form. Whether it's tradition, whether it's slums, or whether it's low housing areas. But unfortunately, as a country, when we want to give infrastructure, we are doing chapkam. It's like a stamp. Even like our housing projects are stamp. Though in architecture schools, we teach something else, but in practice, unfortunately, our community, our fraternity members do something else. That's unfortunate. But the kind of laws and acts and the way government thinks has to change. And that requires very sustained efforts working with the bureaucracy and the politicians. Unfortunately, politicians are so busy with other aspects that they are not really policymakers in the country right now. But they have to come together, have to look at technical aspects and how they can make a difference together with bureaucrats. So last mile connectivity will happen only if our community members, the bureaucrats, the politicians, and professionals like us, together we work. And I guess I've been able to answer your question.
Yeah. Last question, I think Vidya Murali is saying, how do you see ULBs evolving and building their capacities to cope with urban management challenges, more important in the era of climate change? Do you think our country needs a revolution in capacity building of our human resources, both for citizens and government machinery? How can we achieve that? I think this sort of address this touches the larger question that you started with.
Yes, very much. Thanks, Vidya, for your question. Indeed, it requires a revolution. The third tier of the government has to be strengthened. We just can't let it go. What currently is happening is our central governments are supporting some of the ideals, but cities are losing its feet because of even the tax regime which has come in. Maybe it's easy for us to collect GST, centralize one tax, one everything. But the share of local governments' finance is reducing. Municipalities have to have that autonomy to be different, to have local economic development under their umbrella, not have center or the state do it. Each city has to, and they are competing in one sense, but I mean, we decide where to go. academic institutions, the cultural institutions in the city attract people. The knowledge cities, which is called, they attract new expertise, human resource, and they will put forth the pressure on our cities to perform. So it's going to change whether we want it or not. It's going to change. Local governments will be required to do much more, and there is this direction. But autonomy of cities, I constantly talk about it, and maybe at some other point but revolution will happen, and our lives are going to change, definitely. We will not accept, the young population such as yours are not going to accept our broken roads and sewer systems and people going down the drains. No, we will not accept it, right? That's my hope. Thank you.
So thank you, Manvita. I think there are a couple more questions coming in, but we will close it for now. I'm sure we will continue to have you as part of our conversations in the studios and in other forums. So to Shelly, Ame, and Gayatri, hold your questions. We will discuss further at the next opportunity. Thank you so much, Manvita, for joining us. We are all very pleased, and I think this is very insightful. There are a lot of points. I've made a lot of points about what your talk has brought out, and I think it is wonderful that you have shared your experience, and we look forward to further engagement. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chirayu. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you, Manvita. Thank you, Chirayu.
Thank you,
Yes.
Manvita.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you all for joining. Look forward to our next.
Thank you, Manvita.
We will
I'm
see you
connected
soon.
with you after 2 decades.
Okay.